Hi, everybody. Welcome to a special episode of Text to Table where it is ladies' night. I have all the ladies here. Can we all raise our glasses and cheers to what is fabulous women? I am just so excited for tonight. I think we've got some powerhouses around this screen of yours, and we're going to have some good conversations. So I'm thankful for the people that have submitted questions. We're going to talk about those. But before we get started, let's do some quick intro. So I am Michelle Mills Clement, one of your hosts of Text to Table. And let's go around. Who else is here today?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Michelle, for having me on. My name is Maunda Land, and I am President and CEO of Land Consultants, and I have a 20-year history of helping organizations grow and be their best. And I'm very happy to be here and share my stories.
Hi, all. So I'm really excited to be here. I'm Artesha Moore, and I'm a vice president at a local nonprofit, but really I've been using technology for about 25 years to help groups move forward.
Hi, I'm Jackie Price Osafo, Vice President of Membership. Thank you so much, Michelle, for having us. And I'm just excited to be here with some awesome folks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jakeeva Lee. I am the External Affairs Manager for a local realtor association in the city of Chicago. And I'm very excited to be here and join this beautiful panel of ladies. Cheers, ladies.
Cheers.
Cheers.
So I'm going to start by calling out Jakeeva. Sorry. What I do. So Jakeeva said she's with a local organization. So we'll just put it out there. Jakeeva works at my organization. It's not my organization, but she works. We work at the same one. And, you know, we've done this Text to Table. It's been, 4 CEOs. We've kind of been in this executive space, usually 4 people. But we wanted to spread this out and bring Jakeeva in because she really represents future leadership, and she can really bring a great perspective of just the whole climb in not just career, but life as a Black woman. And so calling you out a little bit, but glad that you are here to bring this perspective. And I know we had, of course, our little pretext where we were talking with everyone, and Artesha, you had brought up one of the things about Jakeeva is noticing how different her path has been and just what the difference is. Can you talk about that? Because it was so enlightening.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that was interesting to me was when we were coming up 20 years ago, not having a Black woman in a leadership position to help open doors and kind of show the ropes and pull us forward or even get the light for us. So when we were on the pretext thinking, wow, how different that is, right? Like how different that journey is in having sponsorship. We didn't have sponsorship. We kind of charted our own course, especially from a technology standpoint. For me, being a Black woman and moving forward, it just was kind of unheard of. Even 10 years ago, it was kind of unheard of. So I was excited. Like, look at the work that we have done, right? Like to get to this point where now we have the next generation. So I'll be interested to hear about the challenges, because I know our challenges being first only. But now that you see someone that you can emulate, what does that look like?
Yeah, for me, my personal experience, we were very excited. I was at my association, I want to say 3 or 4 years before Michelle came on board as our CEO. And my first impression when they showed us her picture is like, representation matters. So I was very excited to see her in the capacity of where she was coming in the C-suite. And I immediately thought, okay, what does this look like for me? Because having one-on-one conversations when she kind of got settled in, she spoke to me and said, what are your goals? What are you trying to do? I see so much potential in you, and you're in the sunken place, as she verbatim what she said.
It was, y'all.
And so a light bulb went off for me because I saw the way that she moved. I saw the way that she handled her business, how strategic she was, how she spoke in meetings, how she spoke up for herself and gave her opinion. And for me, that really was a lightning bolt into my personal career journey. And from there, it's just really been soaring for me. I have goals. I have a strategic plan for my life. So it's really about, I feel I'm very fortunate to have Michelle as a CEO because it's right there in my face and I can gravitate towards her. And it's not that I want to follow her lead, but I want to follow her lead.
Hey.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that means a lot. I didn't tell her to say all that. But
You paid her.
Right.
hey, no. I remember when I started and I was jolted by just how many minorities worked there. Because I never worked for a place that had that many minorities on staff already. So that was really just a testament to the organization in and of itself. Walking in there, even like my search committee was super diverse, and that changes the game. Especially my previous association search committee was like all white men. And so just to come to something so different, it was important. I do remember only seeing one woman on the search committee, and I paid attention to that. But what was great was that she had just had a baby, literally like maybe days before.
Oh,
wow.
And then I had my son 3 months before. And so I remember just looking at her and having this connection. So where I saw there's only one woman in this room, I felt like I'm so understood because the stuff I went through with breastfeeding before I got into that room, no one needs to know, but I felt like she knew, you know what I mean? Just what it was to have like a newborn and coming in on a red eye. And that made her being the only one in the room, it made it that much more important to me, that she was in that room and what she was doing and what she was sacrificing to be there. But when I got to the staff team and saw everybody there and saw people from just different generations, different sexual orientations, like different races, different parts of town, different parts of the country, it just really resonated with me as a diverse place. And I cannot emphasize enough how important like diversity just is, because I just never seen that. But Jakeeva and some others were in a sunken place. And I think even though we're there, it doesn't mean that we always have the same opportunities. And I think that is one of the things that I have had struggles with at past associations. Fortunately, not all, but it was something that I'm like, I've seen this play before. Right. Jackie, I think you were the first, right? One of your last groups.
I joined a very homogeneous organization prior to the organization that I'm with now. And I knew that coming in, because one of the things that I do when I look for a place of employment is I check out the board. I look at I look at almost every picture that they have on their website. And of course, just like we do as African Americans, we look for people who look like us. And I said, okay, well, I don't really see anybody who looks like me, but I was invited for an interview by someone I trusted, a white man. So, an ally, a mentor in some aspects. And I joined a very homogeneous organization. And I would say 3 weeks into the experience, I heard someone say the N-word.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I was so shocked. Like, I was.
Did you say it back?
Well, no, I had a couple of other words that I probably shouldn't share today that I wanted to say back, but I was in shock that I was like frozen. And I was in a copier. These three folks were standing at the doorway of the kitchen. So I decided that I didn't really have to say anything, but I need to show up. So I stood out, I walked out, and I stood there just for a second. I looked at them and they were all like, oh my God. Then I had a conversation with HR, and I had a couple issues. Even up to when we look at our board, comments that the board gave me on my performance evaluation, like Jackie needs to do a better job of organizing phone calls. And I was like, really? I have an MBA, a CAE. You want me to organize phone calls? Like, is that what you want me to do? Is that what you want me to focus on? And it took a lot out of me to stay there. My sister said to me, she said, Jackie, you were meant to be there for a reason. So, and I had to figure that part out. That was hard. And when my time came, I decided that it was time for me to go. But I see that they've made some changes. I did sort of leave my lasting impression by sharing my experience. And I called some folks out. I said that I felt like the board, some of them were racist, because I feel like we can walk away, but if you walk away and say nothing will be done. So I left it in my performance evaluation. I said it in my exit interview. I talked to the CEO about it. So I sprinkled the word and I let it be known that this is how I was treated and how I felt. So I couldn't just walk away and not say anything. For the next person, I had to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What happened to that person that said the N-word? You took it to HR. Are they still employed there?
They're still employed there. So afterwards, we had a huge sort of like, they brought in legal to talk about racism, things that you should say, should not say. And for a long time, this guy could not look me in the eye. And every time I was like, I would walk by him, I was like, I just need you to look at me. And he would not look me in the eye. And he wasn't the smartest crayon in the book, you know what I mean? And the what do you call box or whatever you say. And I checked it up as ignorance. And I said to myself, he will never do that again. And I just, I made it be known that I was upset about it. And HR did an investigation. Actually, the 3 people that were having the conversation were investigated. And they had to be written up. But and I said to them, I said, I don't want them to be fired. I want something to be done, but I don't need them to lose their job, because I need them to see me every single day. I need you to see me. And every time you see me, I need you to think about what you said.
We had a member say this. Let me see what you guys think about this. One of our staff members in our membership department was on the phone with a prospective member, sorry, not a member. And we record all calls, and we note that in the beginning that all calls are recorded. And they hung up the phone, and the person thought that the phone was, the call was disconnected. It was still recording. And they say, this N-word is dumb as F. And he heard it because the call wasn't disconnected. And I'm so glad he told his supervisor, said something. And then it kind of like escalated, because this is a prospective member, right? So we ended up hearing about it, and it got to me, and it was like, do we need to do anything? I said, oh yeah, we're going to do something about this. And I ended up talking, to the individual, but they told me, that they were African-American too, and that they didn't mean it that way. And I said, well, I am too. So I took it that way.
What way did you mean it?
Do you get a pass? You know what I mean? Like, is this what we want in the organization? And I'm like, at the end of the day, this staff person, this team member went home feeling down. Regardless of what color you are. You called him one of the most hurtful things you could call a person of color, a Black person, and he felt that. And just to know that experience happens, under my watch, quote unquote, or at this association, was one that I'm like, I will take the time to deal with it, because I think too often it doesn't get dealt with. And Jackie, I mean, I don't know how many people I'm sure that wasn't the first time he said it, but since you were the first one there, how many people let it ride?
Well, Michelle, let me say this. That's good for you as a leader. For me, if I was your employee, not even just, the person that it was affected, I would feel like you stuck up for me. You stuck up for all of us. And that would make me want to stay at an organization longer. I mean, I think sometimes there are organizations that the CEO didn't say anything when all this stuff is going on. And we are, and I say we, a lot of African Americans were hurt. We were angry. And it was just like, it doesn't matter. I'm not going to say anything.
Right.
And no one was asking how you're doing or sticking up for you. And as a leader, I think it's so important that you did what was right. You were showing leadership like never before. And I know that, like Jakeeva was probably like, yes, that's my fault. Because sometimes employees just feel powerless, and it's up to the leader to make sure that they are representing their team and their leaders, and that it doesn't matter. That's not the type of member we want. You're a prospective member, but if you feel that way about my staff, then sorry, you don't need to be my member.
Right.
And
not your
I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
Well, and that people don't get a pass, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the other part too. And I think what you said, that really resonated with me as well. Because sometimes it's like, oh, well, no, I don't know. Right? Like, no, I don't know. And so how does that look? And I think, again, like what you said, Michelle, about your interview, right? Having your staff see and feel that just by presence and by action is invaluable for the rest of their leadership future because of what they see happening, right? Like the model of leadership. Whereas even if an ally did it, it may feel like, okay, yay, but that question goes into, well, how is it if I wasn't here? Right? Like in some aspect of that, but it resonated in the ripples of that. That's what also just makes me excited, right? About the new leaders and what they get to see in us as we do the Jackie, right? Like try to fight for it. I don't know if I could be like Jackie though. I'd be scared. I was scared at one point. I got a voice now. You got to watch out.
Well, why were you scared? What were you scared of?
Because I think in some aspect I drank the Kool-Aid. This is what you need to do to be successful. Again, I was in a very male-dominated STEM kind of slant for my career. I also was in positions where I didn't have a degree until very late in my career, even though I was senior staff. So that fear in the beginning of my career was that I'm senior staff, I'm Black, I don't have a degree, and I need this job. I wouldn't say the N word, okay, look, we ain't going there. But other things where I didn't speak up, where I didn't feel like I had a voice or a say-so until it almost led me to therapy, right? Like not almost, to a different breaking point in my early 30s. That's when I had to find my voice. But before that, I was scared to lose my job. I got to pay my rent. You know what I'm saying? And so that made it like, how do I speak up? And then there was no model, no Black, male or female model. So now I really push myself to say, I got to be the model. You can look how you look, you can be how you be, you can speak your truth. This is also a good time for that. In the late, 80s and the 90s, it wasn't though. Right? Like it just wasn't. And the retaliation was real. Whereas right now it's retaliation, but there's strength in numbers of leaders.
Yeah.
I constantly sit in the space of my ancestors. And what I mean by that, I'm not talking about the ancestors for 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I'm simply going back to my grandparents and my great grandparents and all that they endured. Even my parents who grew up in the South, and my mom doing laundry for a white woman, and one day she decides to put her dogs on my mom as a kid, and she had to run for her life.
Wow.
And so here's why, this is why it's an obligation to me, because my parents survived everything that they had to endure. My grandparents, my great grandfather was ran out of Mississippi because he talked too much. So they said, sort of like, the outdoor Ku Klux Klan was like, listen, you can leave, or we will take care of you and your family.
Right. Yeah, mine too.
Yeah. So for all of those people, I mean, it sends chills up my spine to just repeat that story, that I'm obligated, because I'm standing on their shoulders. I'm standing on their fight.
Yeah, for me, I'm a first-generation college student. My mom was a secretary. My stepfather is an EMT worker. So I come from a working class family background. And even for me, going to college, I always knew my mom, she's like, you just have to get your education. You have to get your education. And my mom having that knowledge of saying, you need your college education, but then what? So she didn't have the knowledge, great woman, by the way. She didn't have the knowledge to say, okay, you need to be connecting with this person. You need to be talking to this individual. You need to be strategically planning for your career. All she knew was just go to college. And so for me, I feel like that's part of why I was in the sunken place, as Michelle, going back to that, as Michelle says, because all I knew is to play this role. I need to play this role so that maybe somebody will see in me that I do want to excel. So I will do a good job, but I want somebody to point it out for me versus being on the proactive side and saying, okay, no, I need to go out and get what I need to get. I need to get my certifications. I need to get designations. I need to be on this board or that committee, connecting with other individuals that can help me propel to where I want to go. So it's all about, it's a learning curve that has been for me personally. And I know so many of my peers that we're trying to come up together. We're trying to figure it out all in real time. Like, okay, what do you think about that? Okay, what do you think I should do that? So it's all about having a circle and having the knowledge of saying, okay, you need to be taking this course of action. It's not just college. You really need to expand beyond that.
Yeah, and I don't think there's one path that's going to get you to where you want to go. I do appreciate the fact that now with more people in CEO roles that are of diverse backgrounds and more companies putting, quotas and saying that they're going to have a diverse workforce, that gives people something to strive for, where they might not have thought that it was possible. So I do think that is very important, like you were saying, Jakeeva. But yeah, I think that's critical. I mean, it's not one path that will get you to the C-suite. It could be many paths, and you could go down a road where you hit a roadblock and you end up with somebody blocking you, or not in it. The organization isn't a match, and then you need to back up and you need to go another way, and that happens in life. And there's not a time frame. I think young people, and I say young people, I still am young, but listen,
we all are relatively.
But I think sometimes we get hasty. Michelle, she was 40 under 40, and 30. Your season is your season. Get to your goal in the time frame that you need to get to your goal, and don't worry about other people's paths, because I'm in Orlando. I know that there's not very many associations like there is in Chicago. And that's I love Orlando. So that's where I am, and that's where I'm going to do what I do. But we live in a COVID-19 virtual space, so I can do things anywhere now. So you see how things, are open up. And that's, people have to realize that your path is your path.
I want to switch gears. We've talked a lot about representation. So let's talk about the Democratic vice presidential nominee and what she represents.
Yeah.
Politics aside, this is the first African-American vice presidential nominee, period.
Mm-hmm.
But she's been met with so much ridicule, not about politics aside, let's just take straight appearance, period. Like, let's just start there. I'll start with what it felt like seeing her up there. And I want to see what you guys felt. And I'll be honest, like, I have been just so crushed around politics since the last election. I was a big Hillary fan. A lot of my friends know that. And so I was just devastated. When I tell you that, I was devastated. And so I have not recovered. And so I really was just waiting for, a nominee to come out and to see kind of what was going on both sides. But when I saw Kamala Harris speak at the DNC convention, the DNC, it was so just powerful to hear and see her, and to see somebody, that looked like me, had the same, path. And that's like why I love Michelle Obama so much, because she's from the South Side, she's, all these things are the same. And in that moment of watching her speech and literally seeing representation, and I felt so proud. And then I went down the Google, hole of seeing all the ridicule about her. And so much of it had to do with, is she not Black enough because she has like a white husband? Is she, like, she doesn't have children? Is she not, does she not get it? She has a blended family. And I couldn't believe I could, but it was something like, how are we still here? What did you guys think? Did you guys see her speech?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. It was everything and then everything, right? Like, it was everything and then everything. I think the next day I just was like really Black. Like, I was like super Black, right? Like, just I'm here and I'm really Black. Because it is that representation, I think, and also the authenticity. But I would say for me, Michelle, this is the same narrative that they do with any strong Black woman, any part of it. So whether you are a Beyonce, I don't know if you guys saw, there was a skit about when white people found out that Beyonce was Black, right? Like just like after Formation, like they just really lost their mind, right? Like it just, exactly, she been Black. She always was Black.
Mhm.
But then it was just
Her name is
something so-
Beyonce.
okay, hello with the apostrophe. Come on with the accent. So that part, what didn't shock me, that happened to Michelle Obama. It happened to any strong, not just Black women predominantly, but any strong woman. What they did to Hillary, super Hillary fan for many, many years, right? So I wasn't shocked by that, but that representation had me feeling different. Had me listening to Chaka Khan at work just on the Zoom call, just feeling Black and brand new.
I felt like we were going down the same road with Hillary. Like I had Hillary flashbacks. And even like on my Facebook feed, like, okay, so during COVID, I have like unfriended a ton of people because people are just, it's when you have a crisis, all the idiots come out and then you realize who's an idiot that you really don't need them in your space. So
okay,
yes, so I've unfriended some unknown idiots, but people who were upset when Hillary was in the race and they were mad because of the emails, like, oh my God, she can't be trusted. But then we elected a sexist, a racist, exes all over the place, right? And so I felt like we're going the same path. And like, if these people don't get together, we're going to have 4 years of this madness again, because we want to just nitpick and tear this amazing woman apart because she chose not to have a family for whatever decision that is. And who knows? I don't really care. It's her decision. Or because she's from African-American Indian descent, or because she married a white man. Who cares? She's qualified. She's a powerful woman. Why do we need to like nitpick and tear each other apart? And what's most upsetting to me is when I see a woman tearing another woman apart. Like that just like makes me want to pull my hair out. And I don't even have any hair, so I would have to like grow this and then pull it out. But like to no end, like, come on, people. This is how we got to where we are right now today, because we were just nitpicking and we rip and we tear each other apart.
Mm.
And I think sometimes that is when people nitpick, it's because they don't have really anything to say.
Yeah.
They just are picking for straws, and then they're going to come out with anything. And that's, I used to work in politics, so I've kind of like taken a few steps back because it can like suck you in. You're talking about a sunken place, you can go deep within politics. So I've kind of taken a few steps back because, my husband will come in and say, did you? And I have to say, you know what? Let's just vote. That's what we got to do. We just got to vote. That's the key. And, it is so good to have someone that looks like us on the ballot. Mm-hmm. And I just hope that everyone votes. Like, that's the key. My mother and father would always tell me, I don't care who you vote for. When you go behind that polling booth, no one sees who you vote for, but you need to vote. Mm-hmm. Now, my mother, she would be like, this is who I'm voting for right here. My dad, he would be like, I'm not telling you. It's my right to do whatever I wanted to do. But the key was, you got to vote. You have the right to vote, and you need to vote.
Kamala getting kind of picked apart. Michelle Obama definitely got picked apart. And there's this theory out there, a mindset that Black women are the most endangered species, that Black women have had the hardest, that we're always the ones cleaning things up where we get hit the hardest. And shifting gears a little bit, the reason like this whole text to table started was over the murder of George Floyd. And we were really struggling with what we were going to do in that space and how to come out and talk about it. And this was really a passion and therapeutic project that happened as a result. But Breonna Taylor died in that same instance.
Mm-hmm.
Not before, right?
Yeah, before.
And the outcry wasn't for her. Right. And I'll admit, I didn't even know the whole story of what happened to her. Like, I had to go search for it. And we see, like, we always hear about Black men getting killed, but we're getting killed too.
Yes.
Why is there that disconnect that we're not as affected?
Because we live in a patriarchal society, first of all. And so men matter regardless, right, of race. Men matter, men first. That's part of it. I think then also with Black men, especially during these tragedy parts, there's a guilt piece too, right? The targeting of Black women from society, police and others, the targeting of Black women from Black men, right? Like, so that also becomes the levels of it. But we will not be silenced. The beautiful age of social media, right? Like we will say, excuse me, say her name, and here go all the names, right? Let's talk about everything. So, but I do think that we bump up against America as a patriarchy, right? Like that men matter. And that's where now I'm loving the voice, like Jackie was saying about the ancestors and speaking up and the obligation as Black women. We're not going to let you all just sweep it under. And by the way, here it is, right? So even calling our brothers out too, that aren't speaking those names and doing those things. But I think that's the part that it just comes back to America, right? Like a patriarchal society.
Yeah. And I do think that there is this misnomer that African American women can suffer more. And, I had a girlfriend that almost passed during childbirth because they thought, she was okay. They checked the babies and the babies were okay. But she said something is not right. And she ended up having a tear in her uterus that they did not know about. But if she would not have yelled, advocated, got her husband, she could have passed. And I think that there's this whole, that's not scientific, but that's, I've heard of others.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That there's this misnomer. That we African American women can suffer, we can take it. And even in the workplace, I can say whatever to her, she can take it. We're strong. We're the angry Black woman. We're not. But that's that misnomer that we need to have people, that unconscious bias that we need to have people overcome.
That I want to go back on that that mortality piece around Black women having children. There are studies that show that Black women are X times more likely to die from childbirth than white women or any other women of color. And you know what, when I had my son 3 years ago, he was born, he wasn't breathing, and he was resuscitated, and then he went straight to the NICU. So he was gone for, he prayerfully only spent a week there. So we were very fortunate. It's the longest week of my life. But I remember my doctor saying to me, you're probably going to have a little bit of PTSD after this is over. And I remember thinking, she's so dramatic. Like, what? He's alive. He's well. That's what we asked for. And, they moved me to the postpartum floor, which is separate. And my doctor, she's a white woman, Dr. Sarah De La Torre. Oh my God, I miss her so much. But she was she made me feel so comfortable. But postpartum floor is not her. That's another team of nurses. And I remember my husband was going back and forth between me and Royce in the NICU, checking on us. And the next day he had got up and said, I'm gonna go downstairs. I was able to take a shower. Why don't you get ready and then come down? And I was like, okay, I'll do that. And I got, dressed. I felt good. And this woman came in because they do newborn pictures. And she came in to take newborn pictures. And she said, oh, we're here. I'm a photographer. I'm here to do the newborn pictures. And I was like, oh, he's not here. And she says, oh, is he, getting the bath? What do you mean he's not here? I said, he's in the NICU. And then she went oh, her face changed. And I remember that's when it clicked for me that something was wrong. I was like, oh, something's wrong. And that's where everything hit me. All that PTSD she said I was going to get, everything just hit me. But what happened later was I got discharged that same day because they wanted me to stay. They had rooms you can stay in the hospital with your child, so you can be close to the NICU. But so it was a little early for me to be getting discharged. And I remember being in there by myself because my husband was downstairs. And because the baby wasn't there, I couldn't practice the latching or the breastfeeding. That was an important piece for me. So they'd send in the nurse, and I remember she wasn't paying attention to anything. And I was asking her a question, and I actually saw her look at her watch and say, I'll be right back. And she never came back. Wow. And I sat there with this pump on my breast for an hour because I thought she was coming back.
Wow.
So finally, I took it off. I went down, saw Bryce, and I told Bryce, like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do because we can't breastfeed yet. What do I do? And everybody's like, oh, they'll come see you. But they never did. Right. And I ended up getting discharged, and I ended up with a fever that night. And I called, because they told me, we're going to discharge you, but just call us if something goes wrong. And I did. And they would not see me. And it turned into, you have already been discharged, so we can't see you. I'm like, but I'm in the hospital. I know I'm not okay. And they kept saying, nope, you can't do this. And so Bryce is going back and forth trying to figure out what to do while he's also making sure Bryce is okay. And long story short, I eventually got admitted to the ER, and I was there for a while, and Bryce had to go back and forth, and I never got that LAC consultant. Like, I ended up falling around and having like a breakdown. And I got the evaluation to talk about the postpartum floor. And I never sent it in because I wanted to sit with it. Because I'm like, was this some discrimination? Because I kept telling them I'm not okay. I kept telling them I don't feel good. And nobody would do anything. The only thing that happened was I had a friend who was a nurse. She was she actually helped us deliver Bryce. And Bryce called her and said, Michelle's not okay. And she's the one that told us exactly what to do. She was off duty so that I could be seen. But I could have been alone in that room with an infection, spiked, and that was it. And died in the hospital. Yeah. And one day I'm going to write my evaluation and send it.
Oh, I would have been already put that on blast on Twitter. Like, boom, and another thing.
Swedish hospital postpartum floor.
Wow.
That list needs to go to the president, like the president of that hospital. Like, skip all those other people.
Yeah, and it's like, I think about it, and then once I started hearing all these stories about so many Black women and what happened to them, and actually I have a friend from college who is an actor, and he was in an episode of one of these sitcoms where he played a father or a husband, and the wife died, and it was based on a true story. And I'm watching it just to support him. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I'm going to watch your scene or your show. And I was in tears, and I remember sending him a message like, dude, this happened to me. I didn't even realize it.
A similar situation. I don't have a kid, but I just wonder what it is, because I had started going to this new doctor, a young white female, and it was my first time going to see her, and I had some concerns, and she's like typing on the computer in the room, just like asking me all these questions, like with her back turned to me. And I'm like, no, I really don't think this is right. I'm feeling something. And and then so she comes over, she examines me, and she's like, no, everything is fine. I'm like, I know my body. Like, I know I feel something is off. And she's like, okay, let me get somebody else to examine you and check it out. So she brings in this older white woman, and I'm expressing like my same concerns, and she's like, no, I don't feel what you feel. I'm not. She's doing like a manual feel, like a touch feel on me, and she's like, no, I don't feel what you mean. It could be that. I think that's what it is. Yeah, that's what it is. And so I left that room feeling very devalued as a Black woman. I like you, Michelle, I said to myself, I'm like, was I just discriminated against from my healthcare provider? It was one of those things where I'm like, first of all, I'm not the greatest fan of going to the doctor. Like, I'm afraid of hospitals and all of that. So it was a big experience for me to even like go there and just like express my concerns. But for them to be very nonchalant, I felt I just didn't feel valued as a woman. Now, if I was someone of another color, I feel like I would have gotten different treatment. So when they have the reports that are coming out about Black women not being taken seriously when they know their body and not being listened to, I feel like it goes back to representation. So I've been on a hunt for a Black female doctor, and they're so far few in between. And when you do find one, they're booked up 6 months out in advance. So it's really disheartening to experience that personally when it comes to your health, because health is wealth. But just that experience that resonated so much with me, Michelle, and I have a hard time believing that these are just sporadic experiences.
Right.
They're very more popular than we think. So it's disheartening.
Jakeeva, I agree with you. I think, and I've had some people that in my family that have had, traumatic, health situations, thankfully recovering from them. But you have to advocate for your own health. I mean, you have to sit down and say, no, I want whatever it is. I want you to give me an MRI. I want you to give me a mammogram. I want you to do whatever. And I actually reached out in our city, we have a concierge medicine doctor. And his name, he's in Orlando. He might travel, I don't know. But his name is Dr. Jason Littleton. But he is phenomenal, because I had an issue just like last month. And I went to the doctor. I called the doctor and they said, we'll get you in October. I called him. He said, he'll see you on Monday.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of care. Like October could have been not too late, but I don't want to be dramatic like that. But for some people, if it was a serious situation, it could have been too late. And you have to advocate. You got to just, and I say that because sometimes we think, oh, well, they're the authority figure. They're the doctor. They know more. No, like you said, your body, and you. Something ain't right. Something's not right. So you better figure out what is not right. And I believe in that. I believe in naturopathic doctors. I believe in all of it. But again, you got to have the resources to do it, because, your insurance doesn't always cover stuff, and they don't want to cover stuff. But, you got to advocate for yourself.
What I learned was after, that's why it's so important to have your circle. So I text a couple of friends from high school and I'm like, have you guys experienced this? And they said, yeah. And then I have this one friend who's very like, if she complains, like she's the person that sends the email to the president of whatever organization because she had a bad experience.
Jackie.
That's you, Jackie. It's a long email. And she said,
President of Comcast one time.
Wow. What she said was, which I found very profound, is that if they deny you a service, tell them to put that on your official medical record. Because when you do that, then the situation changes. Like, okay, well, we'll schedule that special MRI or whatever the case may be that you are really requesting. So if you advocate for yourself, like you said, to have it go on your official medical record, that client, complained about this and we consulted and said that it was no big deal or whatever. If they put that on your medical record and you request that, they have to put it on there. And if it turns out that it was really something that, if you go to a second consultant and they say that this is something, then you can go back to that doctor and potentially sue.
Wow. That's good to know.
That is great.
Wow. The more you know.
Wow.
So, Michelle, I actually have a question for you.
Yeah.
When you were talking about childbirth, but I also thought, as a young CEO and a leader and a mom, right? I'm not a mom, but just the challenges of that, right? Like, could you talk a little bit about that, and especially as a woman and that leadership part?
Yeah.
Look at her face.
I have a toddler. I have a 3-year-old. But I had my son while I was a CEO, not at this job, at another one. And I remember saying I was going to take the full maternity leave, the 3 months. And then I took some extra time as well. So I was out for 3.5 months, which is a blessing. Everybody can't do that. But what I loved about it was the team there was so supportive. And there were a lot of moms there. There were a lot of women there that were like, we got you. You take this time. I had all these plans about what I was going to do. And they were like, sure. So they knew. But this job actually came about. I remember it clearly. I was in the car when the recruiter called and I just pulled up to work. and they were telling me about the role. And I said, I'm about to go into labor like literally any day. So it's not a good time. And they're like, oh, it's a long search. You got time. I was like, yeah, okay, let's stay in touch. And we did. And it was really a situation where I had sent like my resume while I was actually in labor. I was in the bed. And they'd asked like, oh, just send any resume. We don't care what year it is. I'm like, I drop box.
Right there, right?
Push.
I did it, but I wasn't taking it seriously. And it's just crazy to think about. I never would have thought about pursuing a new role with a newborn.
Wow.
But I did, and it was not easy. Like, I moved here first while my son was, young and a baby, and I was flying back home to Seattle on the weekends. I would leave on Fridays and go back home and be with them for the weekend, and then take a red eye back on Monday morning and come back to work. But I talked about that woman that was on the search committee. She was actually the president at the time. So I had empathy here, from jump. I had someone that was in my shoes and understood. And a lot of people had families that were on that committee, and they understood, and they were really supportive. And that's, I think, the biggest piece, is that they're supportive. But when I got here, I wanted to really normalize having a young child in this seat. And I think a lot of times it is, cliche to have your kid here. It's cliche to have a baby at this point. I was an older mom. I gave birth at, I think, 37. And so there's already that stigma and that people put on you. I traveled a lot. I was gone. I wasn't there when he had his first steps. I was at the Delp reunion. So there's been a lot of misses. For me, it's always been about, I hope that I'm showing my son, representation of a strong woman and what I'm capable of. And, he comes to the office so much. He, picked up how to get in here. He knows security guards. He knows how to tell them, let him in. And, the blessing of COVID is no travel and being able to be home with him and bond with him more. But I struggled for a little bit because I felt like I wasn't a traditional mom. Like I didn't have like a mom group of executives. Like everybody says, get a mom group. And I had a great mom group in Seattle, and, we moved as a parents group actually, and mom group too, at several. And when we moved here, like people either didn't have kids or their kids were at different ages or different stages. And I was in these groups online, and I kept filling out a place because they're talking about, oh, my husband doesn't do this. He doesn't. There was a lot of complaining about what their spouse didn't do with their partner. And I'm fortunate my husband decided to be a stay-at-home dad through this whole transition. He left his role, and that, that's hard for him too. He gets scrutinized about that too. And it hasn't been easy. But I think I tell people, if you want to have a child, have a child. Like, don't let your career dictate that, and just normalize it. Like, Royce can be up here and cause havoc and work is going to get done, or he can go with me to an event, or if I need to go to be at something for him, I'm going to go. And just normalizing that I'm not going to be available 24/7, because like people know, weekends I'm with Royce and Brace. It is what it is, but it's not easy. I don't have it down. I'm still looking for that connection of a mother that's not in the traditional sense of what people call it to be. Because I didn't have mom guilt. People say, oh, you got mom. I don't. Actually, I'm good.
Yeah.
They put it on you. Maunda, can we talk about something personal?
What?
Put you on the spot. I know you don't shy away from talking about it, but you're looking at adopting. What's that been like? How did you think about your career? Did you think about your career at all? Or did you say, you know what, forget it, I'm doing it. This is what we want.
I think early on, you always think about, is this the right time to have children? And for me and my husband, we've been married almost 20 years now. So it'll be 20 years in December. Yeah, we got married at like 12 or something, so right. Parental consent, but no. But, we've gone through years of infertility and treatments and, everything. And then finally, I think you have to get to a point where you are ready and you feel like I've got something to give, whether that be my own biological child or the child that I'm blessed to be able to have in my home and raise. And so, you know, we came to that point. And, you know, I started a new job. And then, you know, it was kind of like we had so many transitions in family dynamics of my, you know, moving my father and everything. And so it's never the right time, but the time is right. So we just kind of did the process. We've done our home study and now we're waiting on a child. So it can happen any day now. And I'm kind of happy that COVID kind of hit, because this is an opportunity for me to be at home with this new child. So, you know, things always work out. They just don't work out the way we plan it, but things always work out. So, you know, I wouldn't tell anybody if, you know, sometimes you come up pregnant and you don't know you were planning on being pregnant. That's the way life is. So you just adapt and you got to do it when the time is right. I mean, we just gonna keep getting older. So we can't keep going, letting it go. So I'm excited.
Maunda, you bring up a topic that Black women hardly ever talk about. And this is probably gonna shock you that I went through 10 years of infertility. Obviously, I didn't get pregnant, but I felt completely alone. Like I had no one who looked like me to share my experience with. A couple of my colleagues were going through it, but they didn't look like me. I had one friend, she ended up getting pregnant, but it is a very lonely space.
Oh, yeah.
I am one of 8, and I am the only one of my siblings who does not have a child. So that was hard to be in that space. And then I just finally just said, okay, Lord, this is the card. This is what you gave me. So, you know, I'm 27 nieces and nephews.
Yeah.
And,
Wow.
Cool.
Yes.
Wow.
Age probably like 35. I have a 6-month-old nephew. I've never met him. He lives in Iowa. But I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old nephew. Jalen and Jeremiah. I'm like the 3 J's together. And those are my boys. Like we can roll together. Those 2 little boys. And the other ones are slightly over, and I'm like, this is what I get. And I'm glad that I got what I got. You know, I'm super excited that I have so many amazing people in my life who look at me, look up to me as a parental figure. And you know, I find it as a Black woman, it was a very lonely space. It was very difficult to go through all of that by myself. I mean, of course, at the time with my spouse, but you know, you really go through it as a woman. You know, and people have all these ideas like, why do you need to have kids? You have so many nieces and nephews. Oh, don't worry about it. You know, all this stuff that people say to you, and you're like, no, that's not what I want to hear. You know.
Thank you. I remember going to the doctor and finding out that I had one miscarriage, and I went to the doctor and I had to go back to work for a meeting. I mean, and so it was like, suck it up. Right. And so, you know, it's kind of like you said, you just kind of suffer and you suffer. It's a lonely space. I still have the card my mother sent me when that happened, but you know, it's life. You move on. So, and I'm excited about the future. It's going to be better.
Yeah.
It's going to be great.
I can't wait for you. So
thank you.
Excited for you. Excited for you. All right, ladies. There have been some questions that came in. We did ask, and one of these questions came from one of the moms that's talking about Marie in Seattle. And she had a lot of questions. We may not get to all of them, Marie, but you can talk. We'll talk about them. But one of these questions is, and this is a direct quote, I'm reading it. Karen's ... I think about this a lot. And after all those memes, my assumption was that it's not just a bad egg here or there, but probably that all white women are in fact a little Karen. And by that, I mean socialized to get things done in a system where white men are in power and where playing the victim is a strategy to yield power by voicing fears, crying, etc. All the things. And you see it manifest in racism and a bunch of other contexts too. In that context, my question here is multifold. Is that fair, or am I missing the mark? Is a Karen bad behavior, or is it so common it's a really bad system we're trying to combat? Marie is not African-American, she's a white woman. But what do you guys think about that? What do you think about our Karens? Is this a system we're combating? Is it just so common it happens? Is this in the DNA of white women?
I'll jump in. I will jump in. I will say, no, it's not all of them, but it's just it's systemic.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because of how we are villainized for or not taken, right? We're angry Black women, but we also need to be strong and take everything, and therefore these other women are then weak, right? Like, or then need to be protected. It's not all of them. There's allies, there's relationship, there's people, there's Marie who sent the question, who's deep ally, like, in supporting, right? Like, look, let me put this out there to support. So it's not all of them, but it is perpetuated. And now with the beauty of social media and video cameras and all of these things, you're seeing it aggregated. But we've all had the person who cried to HR because somebody talked mean to me. I'm sorry, we are all leaders here. I was asking a question about money, right? Like, it wasn't even personal. So I think that it is systemic, but it's not all of them, and it's not everyone. And there are some that see their own bull and will call their own self out. Look, don't give me something extra. But it is prevalent and it needs to be dealt with, right? Calling the police on babies, you got to ask yourself, what's your problem, right? But it's a lot and it's systemic.
I've seen it. I think it is, I don't think it's intentional. I don't think they even realize it sometimes. You know, I think it's like, I've watched somebody threaten to call the police, you know, on family members for nothing. And that was like the trigger, because they knew that the police would come to their aid. And we knew that too. And it's like, there's Karen. There's hey girl. So those kind of things do occur. I want to get to some more of her questions. So she says, follow up to that, if this is, you know, something in the system and systemic, what does that mean for trust with white women in general? What does it take to break down that wall? If we assume that we need some real trust to work through these kind of issues. Do we trust white women?
Some of them, just like I trust some people. I mean,
Right.
My trust doesn't, it doesn't really have a color. I trust you until, I say to people, you start off with me at 100%. Everyone does. I'm a trust person. And once you get to about, you know, that C level, say 70%, we're no longer in a trusting relationship. It's a very different experience for the two of us. And it doesn't matter what color you are. I'm just not in a space where I trust you. I think the Karens and the Kens and the microaggression behavior is very prevalent now. I don't think that, for me, I don't necessarily experience outright racism, but microaggressions, yes. And I think they know that they're doing it. I'm pretty sure they know that they're doing it. So, you know, a colleague recently asked me a question in front of a bunch of colleagues about a consultant that we use. He's like, I've always wondered, we paid them a lot of money. I always wondered what they've done. And I said to myself, like, I've only been working here for 3 months. The gal that was managing this relationship before has been here for years. This company that we work with has been a consultant for a decade. And now the Black woman steps into the space and you want to ask me, what are they doing for us? So I said, glad you asked. And I related everything to revenue. I said, here's how we bring in $6.4 million.
Right.
This is what they do for us. Any other questions?
With a beautiful smile.
I'm about to say, with a smile.
Yes,
With a smile.
Get it, Jackie, get it.
Bring it with a smile, baby. But I think that, you know, for me, and not that I'm not I'm the person who doesn't let things pass. I let things pass, but there are some things that we need not let pass, because when we continue to let them pass, they continue to pass.
Do you guys remember when Lean In came out by Sheryl Sandberg? I mean, I'm gonna keep it real. I hated that book, and I've never finished the book because I would start reading the book, and then I would get mad because I'm like, this doesn't pertain to me.
No, it does not.
Like this is not like, yes, there are definitely, you know, women's issues, and we all face those. But then at some point, there's a roadblock for us because we're Black.
Yes.
And so when I would read this book, I would get to that roadblock and I'm like, girl, but you didn't even,
right.
You start talking about, you know, like salaries and whatnot. Like, yes, there's a discrepancy between women, but then it's like an additional how many % for Black women? Absolutely. Yes, you know, white women aren't being promoted to this level, but then there's an additional. And what was so frustrating was how you were able to rally around Lean In. Everybody had a Lean In circle. Everybody was reading a book club. They had wine groups about it. All the conferences had the Lean In this and that. But no, women's reception for this, but you couldn't do a Black reception. You couldn't do a Black circle. You couldn't do a lean into the Blackness. And that hurt and was so frustrating because I'm like, this is not all of me.
Yeah.
Did y'all read that book? Did you finish it?
No, I didn't even
recall if I finished it either.
I didn't finish it, but like anything, I take what I need and I'll leave the rest.
Right.
So, you know, you what you took away from that is that maybe we need to write Black Girl Magic Lean In.
Right.
Well, there is one. You know, if you heard of the memo?
No.
It's the Lean In for Black women or for women.
Oh, well, so yeah, let's get that.
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, you recommended that one, and I loved it, Michelle.
Oh,
was
yeah,
there
you go.
You did a
All right.
You got it. You got it,
Yay.
Jakeeva. Yes.
Yeah, we
What's
did
the author's
audio
name?
version tonight.
Minda Hart, right?
Linda Hart.
Yeah, and it's literally the Lean In for women of color, and it takes it another level. And I think there's still more to go on the topic because I just think the issues change. I mean, we even look at like the right to vote, women's right to vote, which we're just recently celebrating, that didn't include us.
Right.
Exactly.
Nope.
Wasn't us. So, you know, good job, girl, but we're still sitting on the sideline.
It goes back to representation. For me, it's always been, okay, who looks like me? Who's in the position that I want to be in? It doesn't have to be a CEO. It can be an EVP. It can be a vice president. It can be a director of a particular program, and pulling from those nuggets that they put out there and connecting with the right individuals, it makes things easier for everybody else coming behind you.
The last question, and we're just going to do Spitfire round before we close this out. And this is from Marie. She says, who are the Black women we never hear about but need to, a la Kamala Harris voicing the names of the inspiring women we need to know? First, Marie, I'm going to tell you 95% of the women that Kamala said in the beginning of her speech are members of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. You just Google notable deltas. There's a plethora of Black women you need to know. But I would be remiss if I did not also acknowledge that Kamala is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And we are so proud of her, a member of the Divine Nine organization, being up there and representing. So we graciously love, we're supporting her. But she did spit a bunch of deltas. So those who I tell you. But off topic, I'll give you my one person. I will say Carla Harris. Carla Harris was one of the first Black women on Wall Street. She's got amazing books, Expect to Win and Strategize to Win. Her book, Expect to Win, changed my career trajectory. She does happen to be a Delta, but I think she is a key person to know. Who else you got real quick before we wrap up? Maunda.
I mean, I say look close, look far. I mean, for me, close, serial entrepreneur, Dr. Stacia Pierce is my mentor. I love her, and you know, she succeeds in everything. So I love it. So
love it. Artesha.
My grandmother, local community activist in Washington, D.C., Gloria Dugar.
Love that. Jackie.
I'm going to say my mother, Katie Price. She was an educator. She was a hustler. She was a hardworking woman. My backbone belongs to her.
Love that. Jakeeva.
There's so many to name, and I can't get to one, and I apologize. I look out for a lot of individuals in the city of Chicago. Michelle, yourself, Felicia Davis, who's the CEO of the Chicago Foundation of Women, Michelle Mason, who's the CEO Association Forum. Just a lot of Black CEOs. I can name drop so many. I like to look to realistic individuals in reality versus superstars. So it makes me feel more attainable. So I can't name one. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I can go on and on.
That's a good one. We can follow up on that later. Just keep thinking of them. Well, ladies, I want to thank you so much for joining us on Text to Table. Let's raise a glass to all of you and all the women out there. Thank you guys all for joining us. Please let us know what you think. As always, we want to hear if you've got other topics. We're going to have to do Ladies Night again, I think.
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you, Michelle.
Tonight, you heard some interesting stories about how these women have navigated being high-performing executives and also managing their family life. We're going to continue that theme into episode 4, talking about race and leadership in the home. We'll have some special guests who will explore with us conversations they're having with their children around racism and the current events happening in our country right now. So please join us in October for episode 4. For the most up-to-date information about upcoming episodes on Text to Table, please visit texttotable.com and subscribe to our email listserv. We thank you for joining us tonight. We hope you've been inspired. Please have a good night.